Are you tired of worshiping at home? Join the Church Triumphant Global, a word church, for a safe in-person worship service that is sure to empower your spirit and bless your soul. Join one of our weekend services, Saturday church at 12 noon, Sunday morning worship at 10 a.m., 6531 Dogwood View Parkway off Interstate 220 at Watkins Drive near Echelon Parkway. Mass and social distancing are practiced. Come and worship with us.
When you wake up in the morning, you should be saying, God, how do I get to the top of my mountain? Remember Caleb and how that Caleb was old, but he was saying, give me this mountain. God, it doesn't matter how old I've gotten. God, you give me this mountain. You give me the place that I was predestined to dominate. And the thing that the enemy does is that a lot of times he will try to run your clock out with all kind of little tests and trials and putting the wrong people in your life, because the wrong people are time stealers. And what happens is, if he can just keep you in a cycle of bad relationships, bad friendships, bad marriages, just all kind of stuff, and if you get hooked up with the wrong person, it's hard to think straight. You don't know what I'm talking about. Y'all don't know what I'm talking about. You get hooked up with the wrong person and you can pray, but you can't think. That's why we praying for our children early, because I understand the power of a bad relationship. That's why I spend so much time with our couples, teaching and explaining and outlining. Why? Because marriage is a covenant. It's something that's so powerful that God said, if you would have it right, you'll have heaven, you'd have days of heaven on earth. So what the enemy will do is he tries to run your clock out. And what does that mean? That means that when God spoke to Abraham, and he told Abraham, he says, listen, through you and your wife, you will receive a son. And you'll be the father of many nations. Well, because they were thinking according to the flesh, and carnal thinking is worse than having the devil in your mind. Because carnal thinking, you think it's your thoughts. Y'all didn't hear me. I said, when you have carnal thinking, it's worse than having the devil in your mind, because carnal thinking, what you start to think is the thoughts that you are thinking are not from the devil, but they are your thoughts. And it is twisted. It's reprobate. It means that you start thinking that right is wrong and wrong is right. And everything seems like it's upside down. So what the enemy did to Abraham and Sarah is that he gave them an idea and then made them think it was their idea. He said, okay, So Sarah said, okay, well, but you know what, it's just nothing happening here. So, I'm already old, and you're old, but you can still produce. Let me bring in Hagar. Hagar can have your child, and that child can be the child of promise. But notice what happened. After after Ishmael was actually born, it was 13 years before God spoke to Abraham and Sarah again. If you ever come to a place in your life where you're not hearing God, you go back to the place where he spoke to you the last time. Because if God is speaking and you are ignoring, he'll stay right in that place and won't say anything else. It's scary when you pray and you can't hear. I don't want that. I don't ever want to come to a place where when I get down on my knees and pray, when I'm praying going down the interstate, when I'm praying going down the road, if I can't hear God, I get nervous. Because then I know that I have ignored an instruction. When those GPSs were first created, way back a long time ago, if it said to turn left and you kept going straight, it would go completely silent. Which means that it would not redirect you. It would just hush. See, because the thought is, if you know which way to go, you don't need me. So God got quiet in Abraham's house, and for 13 years didn't say anything. So it says, for the promise that he should be heir of the world was not to Abraham or to his seed through the law or through the flesh, but it was through the righteousness of faith. The righteousness of faith. What is the righteousness of faith? The righteousness of faith is found in Romans 10. Romans 10, the righteousness of faith. How do I know that I'm talking the righteousness of faith? How do I know that I'm walking in the Word of God? How do I know that I'm hearing God and not my flesh? It means that I'm walking in what God has said. There is nothing like hearing the proceeding word of God. Nothing like praying and having fellowship in the morning or the noonday or in the evening where you talk to God and God talks back. Romans the 10th chapter, verse 6. It says, but the righteousness which is of faith speaketh on this wise. He says, say not in thine heart, who shall ascend to heaven? He said, listen. He said, listen. He says, when you're walking by the righteousness of faith, you don't need to call Jesus to come into the situation. You don't need to call him to come down from heaven. You don't need to call him to come up from a grave. Why? Because the righteousness of faith is the word of God in your mouth.
Are you tired of worshiping at home? Join the Church Triumphant Global, a word church, for a safe in-person worship service that is sure to empower your spirit and bless your soul. Join one of our weekend services, Saturday church at 12 noon, Sunday morning worship at 10 a.m., 6531 Dogwood View Parkway, off Interstate 220 at Watkins Drive, near Echelon Parkway. Mass and social distancing are practiced. Come and worship with us.